about if you're untruthful in small things, you should be disbelieved in big things. There's no question about that. We've known that all along. So this man, with his big lies, and then we have Furman coming right on the heels, and the two of them need to be paired together because they are twins of deception. Furman and Van Adder, twins of deception, who bring you a message that you cannot trust. That you cannot trust. Let's continue on where we left off then with this man, Furman, who says some very interesting thing in the course of his testimony. And as we talked about Van Adder's big lies, we have Furman's big lies. The Van Adder, the man who carried the blood. Furman, the man who found the glove. You recall that he was asked, as I read to you yesterday briefly, the question well phrased by Lee Bailey, have you ever used this N-word in 10 years? It went right back to 85. And he picked that 85 date. You know why? Because of the Kathleen Bell letter. Just like they knew about it. Picked that date. So he knew he was lying. Honed in on him. You know, liars can be tricky. And so he was, at that point, trying to pin it down for you. 10 years. 85 to 95. This was like in February of this year. Says also he never met Kathleen Bell, this Marine Center. Tells you that Rokar, the photographer, took this photograph after 7 o'clock in the morning. I remember that. Look back through your notes. And the reason he tells you that is because he wants that photograph of him pointing at the glove taken after he supposedly finds the glove at Rockingham. Now, you may not have caught that right at the beginning when this was happening. He says he took the photograph at Rockingham after 7 o'clock a.m. after they returned from Rockingham. You know, they all go over to Bundy after 5 o'clock. Strike that. At Bundy, they all go over to Rockingham at 5 o'clock from 5 to 7. And so it becomes very, very important as we look at this photograph in a few minutes. Rokar then comes here near the end of the case. There's been nobody called to refute him in rebuttal. It says, these photographs on this contact sheet are all taken while it's dark. He says he could tell the difference in a photograph taken an hour and a half before sunrise, 5:41, 5:42, and an hour and a half afterwards. So then why then is this big liar in the crime scene with access to the glove and the hat? Why is he down there pointing at this glove where he's walking and all in the blood and everything when he wants you to believe it's 7 o'clock? Now we know it's not 7 o'clock. See that photograph up there? That is Mark Furman pointing, you see the envelope? Pointing under this neatly arranged cap and glove, supposedly just happened to fall right under that bush in that fashion. That's what you're asked to believe. There he is pointing at it. Well, now, let me tell you why this is important. You recognize Furman. Personification of evil. When he's doing that, he's trying to tell you this is some important piece of evidence here. And I just came back from Rockingham. This matches the glove found over there. That's what he tells you. But he's lying again. He's lying. That's why he's central to this case. Because he hadn't even been to Rockingham at that point. And he's tracking in that blood at that point. And that becomes very important. Because you remember he slips up and says, in the Bronco at some point. Did he get in that Bronco? Did he put a bloody footprint in that Bronco? Are his shoes size 12? Talks about in the Bronco. He talks about them. Remember, there's a question he was asked about gloves. And Lee Bailey asked him about, well, he says, well, he's talking about gloves. And he says, them. Never explained that. He says, them. Them, does that mean two gloves? He said, I saw them. Is that two gloves? Why would you say them? He's intelligent enough to come and lie to you. So, that picture, that photograph there, that seals their doom. That seals their doom. This man, who in 85, in his mind, started this. This man, who's asked to go over and help O.J. Simpson, to notify him and take care of the kids. This man, this perjurer, this racist, this genocidal racist, this is the man And he says then, inferentially he didn't plant the glove, but now we know about these photographs when they were taken. And you look, you'll have that contact sheet, and you'll see the photograph of Mr. Cole Brown Simpson. And the last two on this roll, taken at nighttime with the flash at 4:30 or so in the morning. Why else is this important? Because they're going to tell you, well, he didn't have an opportunity to get the glove or get access to anything. Remember, they brought all these police officers in here, including Lieutenant Spangler, to say, well, you know, we were just watching Furman the whole time. First of all, you knew that was a lie at the beginning. Why would anybody be necessarily watching him? They're always covering for him anyway. But we knew that wasn't true, because when Rokar got there, shortly after 3 o'clock, Rokar goes to that back alley and he sees Risky, who's back there then. Remember, Rokar sees Risky in the back alley. Rokar doesn't even see Furman for like a half hour after he gets there, he says. Then all of a sudden, Furman shows up. Where has he been? What's he been doing? And then Risky is out in the front of Bundy there. And Risky testifies about the taking of this photograph. He wants to place the time later, but he said it's before the sun comes up, before daylight. That has to be, because we've stipulated to it, before 5:41. So inadvertently, he corroborates Rokar. But Rokar knows, because he took these photographs. Why then, ladies and gentlemen, is he pointing at this glove when he hasn't even been over there? Why then would they try to tell you he doesn't have time at Bundy when he's by himself for this period of time? He's not with any Spangler, he's walking around by himself. Why then is he walking in that crime scene, and why does he lie to you and said he didn't have access to the crime scene? Now these are the facts. These are the facts. I haven't made them up. This is what you heard in this case. This is what we've proven. Some of it came in late, some of it came in early. But our job here is to piece this together so that you can then see this. So when he refers to the gloves as them, that's never been cleared up for you, and it can't. It's a Freudian slip. When he talks about in the Bronco, and there was a dispute, well, did he really say that? Remember, the tape was played, the preliminary hearing, and his voice was heard saying, in the Bronco. You can see all these things. He's strolling down to Rockingham. The big man, figuring a way to do this, to carry out this plan, this thought he has in his mind since 1985, to make the big score. And so Rokar severely impeaches Furman about these photographs. And once again, these photographs speak 1,000 words. Concluding about Risky, he said on cross-examination that the photograph pointing at the glove was taken at least 40 minutes before daylight. The sun rose at 5:41, maybe a little bit late, but it was before daylight. And so we know that. That's now clear. Why did they then all try to cover for this man Furman? Why would this man, who is not only Los Angeles' worst nightmare, but America's worst nightmare, why would they all turn their heads and try to cover for him? Why would you do that if you're sworn to uphold the law? There is something about corruption. There's something about a rotten apple that will ultimately infect the entire barrel. Because if the others don't have the courage that we've asked you to have in this case, people sit silently by. We live in a society where many people are apathetic. They don't want to get involved. And that's why all of us, to a person in this courtroom, have thanked you from the bottom of our hearts. Because you know what? You haven't been apathetic. You're the ones who made a commitment toward justice. And it's a painful commitment. But you got to see it through. Your commitment, your courage, is much greater than these police officers. This man could have been off the force long ago if they'd done their job, but they didn't do their job. People looked the other way. People didn't have the courage. One of the things that has made this country so great is people's willingness to stand up and say, that's wrong. I'm not going to be part of it. I'm not going to be part of the cover-up. That's what I'm asking you to do. Stop this cover-up. Stop this cover-up. If you don't stop it, then who? You think the police department is going to stop it? You think the DA's office is going to stop it? Do you think we can stop it by ourselves? It has to be stopped by you. And you know, they talked about Furman. They talked about him in derisive tones now. And that's very fashionable now, isn't it? Everybody wants to beat up on Furman, the favorite whipping boy in America. I tell you, I don't take any delight in that. Because you know, before this trial started, if you grow up in this country, you know there are Furmans out there. You learn early on in your life that you're not going to be naive. That you love your country, but you know it's not perfect. So you understand that. So it's no surprise to me. But I don't take any pride in it. But for some of you, you're finding out the other side of life. You're finding out. That's why this case is so instructive. You're finding out about the other side of life. That things aren't always as they seem. It's not just rhetoric. It's the actions of people. It's the lack of courage. And it's the lack of integrity at high places. That's what we're talking about here. Credibility doesn't attach to a title or position. It attaches to the person. So the person who may have a job where he makes $2 an hour can have more integrity than the highest person. It's something from within. It's in your heart. It's what the Lord has put there. That's what we're talking about in this case. And so why don't they speak out? Why do they take him to their breast? Compare how our prosecutors treat Furman as opposed to Cato Kalin. Look at how they treated Mark Partridge as opposed to Cato Kalin. Look at how they embraced him. And now they want to distance themselves. These same people say, oh, he's not important. But the Rokar photograph puts the lie to that. He is very important. And what becomes so important when we talk about these two twin demons of evil, Van Adder and Furman, is the jury instruction, which you know about now. And it says essentially that a witness willfully false. I think Mr. Douglas is going to put that up for us. A witness willfully false in one material part of his or her testimony is to be distrusted in others. You may reject the whole testimony of a witness who willfully has testified falsely to a material point unless from all the evidence you believe the probability of truth favors his or her testimony in other particulars. Why is this instruction so important? We got the bullet points up there. First of all, both prosecutors have now agreed that we have convinced them, beyond a reasonable doubt, by the way, that he's a lying, perjuring, genocidal racist. And he's testified willfully false in this case on a number of scores. That's what his big lies tell you. And when you go back in the jury room, some of you may want to say that, well, gee, you know, boys will be boys. This is just like police talk. This is the way they talk. That's not acceptable as the consciences of this community. If you adopt that attitude, that's why we have this. Because nobody has had the courage to say it's wrong. You are empowered to say we're not going to take that anymore. I'm sure you'll do the right thing about that. So that what you then, it seems to me, must do is you have the authority. You may reject the whole testimony. You can then wipe out everything that Furman told you, including the glove and all the things he recovered in the glove. That's why they're so worried. That's why when people say Furman is not central, they're wearing blinders. They've lost their objectivity. They don't understand what they're talking about. It's embarrassing for learned people to say that, but they're entitled to their opinions, but we're going to speak the truth. In a courtroom, you are supposed to speak the truth. A witness who walks through those doors, who raises his or her hand, swears to tell the truth. You've heard lie after lie after lie that's been exposed. And when a witness lies in a material part of his testimony, you can wipe out all of his testimony as a judge of the facts. That's your decision again. Nobody can tell you about that unless you feel that the greater probability of truth lies in something else they said. Wipe it out. This applies not only to Furman, it applies to Van Adder, and then you see what trouble their case is in. Because they lied to get in there to do these things. When Van Adder carries that blood, they can't explain to you why he did that. Because they were setting this man up. And that glove, anybody among you think that glove was just sitting there, just placed there, moist and sticky after 6.5 hours. The testimony is it would be dried in 3 or 4 hours, according to McDowell. We're not naive. You understand. There's no blood on anything else. There's no blood trail. There's no hair and fiber. And you get the ridiculous explanation that Mr. Simpson was running into an air conditioning on his own property. So,
anybody else?
Witness is willfully false. One material part distrusted in others. These two form basically the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Now, you know, people talk all the time, well, you know, you're being conspiratorial and whatever. Gee, why would all these police officers set up O.J. Simpson? Why would they do that? I'll answer that question for you. They believed he was guilty. They wanted to win. They didn't want to lose another big case. That's why they believed that he was guilty. These actions rose from what their belief was. But they can't make that judgment. The prosecutors can't make that judgment. Nobody but you can make that judgment. So when they take the law into their own hands, they become worse than the people who break the law because they are the protectors of the law. Who then polices the police? You police the police. You police them by your verdict. You're the ones who send the message. Nobody else is going to do it in this society. They don't have the courage. Nobody has the courage. You have a bunch of people running around with no courage to do what is right. Except individual citizens. You're the ones in war. You're the ones who are on the front line. These people set policies. These people talk all this stuff. You implement it. You're the people. You're what makes America so great. And don't you forget it. And so, understand how this happened. It's part of a culture of getting away with things. It's part of a culture looking the other way. Of we determine the rules as we go along. Nobody's going to question us. We're the LAPD. And so you take these two twins of deception. And if, as you can, under this law, wipe out their testimony, the prosecutors realize their case then is in serious trouble. From risky to bushy. They came together in this case because they want to win. But it's not about them winning. It's about justice being done. They'll have other cases. This is this man's one life that's entrusted, or will be soon, to you. So when we talked about this evidence being compromised, contaminated, and corrupted, some people didn't believe that. Have we proved that? Have we proved that it was compromised, contaminated, and corrupted? And yes, even something more sinister? I think you'll agree we did. But there's something else about this man, Furman, that I have to say before I'm going to terminate this part of my opening argument and relinquish the floor to my learned colleague, Mr. Barry Scheck. is something that Furman said, and I'm going to ask Mr. Douglas and Mr. Harris to put up that Kathleen Bell letter. You know, it's one thing, and I dare say that most of you, when you heard Furman say he hadn't used the N-word, that you probably thought, well, he's lying. We know that's not true. That's just part of it, and that's what the prosecutors want to just talk about, that part of it. It's not the part that bothers us on the defense. I live in America. I understand. I know about slights every day of my life. But I want to tell you about what is troubling, what is frightening, what is chilling about that Kathleen Bell letter. Let's see if we can see part of it. And I think you will agree. So I want to put the focus back where it belongs on this letter and its application to this case. You'll recall that God is good, and He always brings you a way to see light when there's a lot of darkness around. And just through chance, this lady had tried to reach Shapiro's office, couldn't reach it. And in July of 1994, she sent this fax to my office, and my good, loyal, and wonderful staff got that letter to me early on. And this was one you just couldn't pass up. Get a lot of letters, but you couldn't pass this one up because she says some interesting things. She wasn't a fan of O.J. Simpson. What did she say? I'm writing to you in regards to a story I saw on the news last night. I thought it ridiculous that the Simpson defense team would even suggest that there might be racial motivation involved in the trial against Mr. Simpson. Yes, there are a lot of people out there who thought that at that time. And you know, you can't fault people for being naive. But once they know, if they continue to be naive, then you can fault them. That's what it is, and that's why this case is important. Don't ever say again in this county or in this country that you don't know things like this exist. Don't pretend to be naive anymore. Don't turn your heads. Stand up. Show some integrity. And so I then glanced up at the television and was quite shocked to see that Officer Furman was a man that I had the misfortune of meeting. You may have received a message from your answering service last night that I called to say that Mr. Furman may be more of a racist than you could even imagine. I doubt that, but at any rate, it was something that got my attention. Between 1985 and 1986, I worked as a real estate agent in Redondo Beach for Century 21 Bob Maher Realty, now out of business. At the time, my office was located above a Marine recruiting center off of Pacific Coast Highway. On occasion, I would stop in to say hello to the two Marines working there. I saw Mr. Furman there a couple of times. I remember him distinctly because of his height and build. You know, he's tall. While speaking to the men, I learned that Mr. Furman was a police officer in Westwood. Isn't that interesting? Just exactly the place where Laura McKinney met him. And I don't know if he was telling the truth, but he said that he'd been in the special division of the Marines. I don't know how this subject was raised. But Officer Furman said that when he sees a nigger, as he called it, driving with a white woman, he would pull them over. I asked, would if he didn't have a reason? And he said that he would find one. I looked at the two Marines to see if they knew he was joking. But it became obvious to me that he was very serious. Now let me just stop at this point. Let's back it up a minute, Mr. Harris. Pull it back down, please. If he sees an African American with a white woman, he would stop them. If he didn't have a reason, he'd find one or make up one. This man will lie to set you up. That's what he's saying there. He will do anything to set you up because of the hatred he has in his heart. A racist is somebody who has power over you, who can do something to you. People could have views, they keep them to themselves. But when they have power over you, that's when racism becomes insidious. That's what we're talking about here. He has power. A police officer in the street, a patrol officer, is the single most powerful figure in the criminal justice system. He can take your life. Unlike the Supreme Court, you don't have to go through all these appeals. He can do it right there and justify it. And that's why this has to be rooted out in the LAPD and every place else. Make up a reason. Because he made a judgment. That's what happened in this case. They made a judgment. Everything else after that was going to point toward O.J. Simpson. They didn't want to look at anybody else. Mr. Darden asked, who did this crime? That's their job as the police. We've been hampered. They turned down our offers for help. But that's the prosecution's job. The judge says, we don't have that job. The law says that. We'd love to help do that. Who do you think wants to find these murderers more than Mr. Simpson? But that's not our job. It's their job. And when they don't talk to anybody else, when they rush to judgment and their obsession to win, that's why this became a problem. This man had the power to carry out his racist views. And that's what's so troubling. Let's move on. Making up a reason. That's troubling. That's frightening. That's chilling. But if that wasn't enough, the thing that really gets you, she goes on to say, Officer Furman went on to say that he would like nothing more than to see all niggers gathered together and killed. He said something about burning them or bombing them. I was too shaken to remember the exact words he used. However, I do remember that what he said was probably the most horrible thing I'd ever heard someone say. What frightened me even more was that he was a police officer, sworn to uphold the law. And now we have it. There was another man not too long ago in the world who had those same views, who wanted to burn people, who had racist views and ultimately had power over people in his country. People didn't care. People said he's just crazy, he's just a half-baked painter. They didn't do anything about it. This man, this scourge, became one of the worst people in the history of this world, Adolf Hitler. Because people didn't care, didn't try to stop him. He had the power over his racism and his anti-religionism. Nobody wanted to stop him, and it ended up in World War II. The conduct of this man. And so, Furman was to take all black people now and burn them or bomb them. That's genocidal racism. Is that ethnic purity? What is that? What is that? We're paying this man's salary to espouse these views. You think he only told Kathleen Bell, whom he just had met? You think he talked to his partners about it? You think his commanders knew about it? You think everybody knew about it and turned their heads? Nobody did anything about it. Things happen for a reason in your life. Maybe this is one of the reasons we're all gathered together here this day. 1 year and 2 days after we met. Maybe there's a reason for your purpose. Maybe this is why you were selected. There's something in your background and your character that helps you understand this is wrong. Maybe you're the right people at the right time, at the right place to say no more. We're not going to have this. This is wrong. What they've done to our client is wrong. This man, O.J. Simpson, is entitled to an acquittal. You cannot believe these people. You can't trust the message. You can't trust the messengers. It is frightening. It is quite frankly frightening. And it's not enough for the prosecutors now to stand up and say, oh, let's just back off. The point I was trying to make, they didn't understand that it's not just using the N-word. Forget that. We knew he was lying about that. Forget that. It's about the lengths to which he would go to get somebody black and also white if they're associated with black.